And finally, what we identified is that there are a couple of discussion papers. So here we did not analyze everything, but the discussion paper on labeling exemptions in emergency situation. This discussion paper was introduced by the United States and makes a recommendation to potentially introduce a new work in the form of a new guideline as to how these exemptions ought to be considered in emergency situations. Our analysis concludes that this definitely is worthy of new work, because if something we learned from the pandemic is that we needed to introduce more flexibility in the way food labeling provisions are to be applied, but at the same time, we want to make sure that those situations where health and safety is considered and is addressed by labeling, basically even in emergency situations, we need to make sure that those labeling requirements still prevail. And we identified here also another new work being discussed through another discussion paper on sustainability claims. And here we found that the positions are far more divided as to whether this is worthy of starting a new work or not. So this will be also another item of interesting discussions in the upcoming period. And with this, I conclude really the analysis that we prepared, and happy to hear your views, your input, but also your suggestions as to the way this analysis was conducted and made earlier. I can tell you, like, we can provide ourselves just some self-criticism. The fact that the analysis was not provided to you in a more timely fashion prior to this meeting, such that you would have had enough time to digest the material that was shared, and hopefully, to have maybe more lively discussions today. Finally, just reminding you of this hybrid side event that we are organizing in collaboration with Codex Canada. I mean, when I say in collaboration, basically Codex Canada is allowing us to have the time to organize this side event. And this is around food allergen management for food manufacturers. We're sharing our experience in Canada to develop a consensus guidance. And this is going to be both in-person event and a hybrid event. And you can look at the information on our website. Thank you very much again for your participation and your interest.
Thank you very much, Professor Godefroy. That's a rather spectacular deep dive into this question. It's a little bit of a pity that even a cursory discussion is not really very feasible at this moment. But just to, maybe you can just comment briefly about the kinds of expertise that's brought to this technical analysis of the issue, because of course with these kinds of issues you have a number of different aspects. One, of course, is the health aspect and description of allergens and decision of allergenicity and prevalence and severity. Then you have the practical aspects of what food producers can do and how they can manage that risk and reduce that risk. You have the issue of communication. So how are these food labeling guidelines understood by the consumers and formulated, and then the dissemination of the information so that food manufacturers know how to determine if they're in compliance or not. So a lot of complicated topics. Maybe you could just say in shorter language than my question, briefly about how, which experts are pulled together, and so we can also think about the experts that we want to start pulling together in the future in this region.
Well, I mean, the experts that we need are primarily, I would say, experts in labeling policy, because, I mean, that's really what we need. It's really labeling policy, the way the labeling policy applies, but also with the ability to understand and to digest the material that is stemming from the expert consultation. So and the expert consultation has a mix of, I would say, risk assessment expertise in general. So really, it's the ability to read a JECFA document and to get the gist of it. But also in this particular case, because we are talking about allergies, you may need to have more expertise in protein chemistry, some expertise related also to clinical studies, epidemiology, these type of disciplines that support risk assessment capacity.
Okay, that's helpful. So just to say, I don't know if we'll be able to do this, but our colleagues in ILSA Europe have done quite a bit of work on both the management of these types of allergenicity risk and some of the science behind that. We're trying to see if we can start to organize more of that type of work in our region, and there are some actually considerable top experts. This allergenicity issue is going to become, or may become, more of a discussion point because, as you know, there's a lot of work going on novel proteins, and including insects, and for some of those novel proteins, this allergenicity work has not been completed. So we know, eggs and milk and peanuts and other things, but we may not know all the insects and some of that kind of work. So there's a lot of work to be done on let's say the science of detection and effects, health effects of these allergens, and then this policy development naturally should stem from that.
Yeah, I think.
Hello.
Right.
We have someone. Yes, please.
Yes. Yeah. So I would like to get your advice. I mean that for a labeling policy, this is this policy developed or prepared by Ministry of Health or Trade and Commerce, or in with what institution? Yeah.
Generally, it is essentially the food competent authority that is responsible for that. Now, as you know, labeling policies tend to be, if I want to put them in the context of international agreements, WTO agreements, you have two types of policies. You have SPS related ones and TBT related ones. And sometimes for labeling, you may have the two considerations that are in play. So when we have an issue of labeling where the driver for labeling is essentially a health issue, and this is essentially the case when it comes to allergens, the driver for labeling here, it's not a quality consideration. It's not, a consumer perception, confusion, fraud management, etc. No, this is really a health and safety element that we are addressing with food labeling as a risk management tool. So in this particular case, I would say it's the competent authority that is in charge of management of food from a health standpoint. So I'm gonna put it in that fashion, because of course every country is different. You see, when issues related to labeling, like I'm gonna give you the example, organic labeling, for example, or halal labeling, this is not a health and safety issue. This is more of a quality consumer information, characteristics of the food, presentation of the food to the consumer, etc. So that's more of a TBT, technical barrier to trade related issue. Then I would say that the jurisdiction that is responsible is the one that deals with the labeling policy for food that is more of a consumer protection / fair trade considerations, so that's essentially where in some countries, the two responsibilities are in one competent authority. So it depends on countries.
Thank you. Yeah, because we have just passed the SPS law at the Council of Ministers, and we're waiting for promulgation. But of course, we are. I think our participation in every meeting, it's capacity building for us to see how we develop our policy, national policy, and then also law that in line with the three sisters organization, which is Codex, SPS, and then TBT. SPS, IOA, and also IPPC. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
helpful comment. So it will be interesting to see. I don't know if this group, this roundtable, can facilitate this, but of course there's a risk assessment element of this, right? It's a health issue, and how to manage that risk. So we know Iraq. I don't think we invited specifically Iraq or any of the other national risk assessment centers to this. You know, because of the short timing available, there wasn't an opportunity to you know, get a kind of survey of the risk assessment centers specifically on this issue. And there are some new technical developments that are going on with quantitative risk assessment and use of that. So there's a lot of technical aspects that are being poured into this. So I think this was maybe a good start, and to get the advice of these experts that GForce has brought together, hopefully is really helpful to the region. But there's a lot of background that we probably need to do over these coming years on you know, where in the region do we get the risk assessments. As for I think Iraq is in place, but not generating too many risk assessments, and I'm not sure what they've done on allergies and allergens. So you know, how to pull this together to do that. So yes, a lot of work to be done, and some complicated things to pull together.
And if I may react to that, actually, Jeff, in particular, in relation to the item on allergens, I think actually if the item on precautionary allergen labeling moves forward, there will be a need to provide more resources, both for industry and for competent authorities, as to how these risk assessments for allergens are to be applied. This is an area where I think guidance is lacking, and even the methodologies that are applied. Now, I can tell you, it's not rocket science in any way. It's just that it's not the regular risk assessment that people applies. So it's just that these practices need to be further disseminated. So if this item moves forward, I mean, that's also a consideration for this roundtable, but also for the competent authorities in the region to consider. Should we basically have some dissemination, activities related to the way risk assessments are to be applied for food allergens, both by industry in the context of their assessment of whether PAL is needed or not, but also by regulators in case they find themselves confronted with a situation of an unintended presence of food allergens, and they want to know how to deal with it, both from a labeling and risk management perspective writ large. Yeah,
I imagine that's going to be a complicated issue. As you know, we have a lot. I don't know exactly, but I would say even the majority of our food in Southeast Asia is coming from SMEs. And so how to even inform them of, for example, a new change and what that requires for the labeling, and then how to get them to do proper risk reduction steps will be complex.
Yeah. Coming back to the agenda on CCFL, and thanks, Prof. Samuel, for highlighting e-commerce and using technology. When I look through the e-commerce comments, I think 2 or 3 items stand out, and there are some comments from ASEAN members as well. For example, on is there a need to exempt small packaging? There was a debate about that. Some countries say, yes, we should exempt. Some countries say, no, there's no need to exempt because this is virtual platform. There's no limitation of space. Why do you need to exempt small packaging from providing all the information needed by the consumer? So that could come up for discussion, and minimum durability, labeling could come out for discussion. And also I noticed some discussion on 5.3 where it says that national authorities may, I think Prof. Samuel mentioned about that, national authorities may require additional information, and then you said that maybe it's not wise to have that. There was the harmonization for Codex, right? So there's some argument for that also. So I think these are the points that CCPs may take note. Yeah? But if there any reaction from any CCP to share your thoughts on this e-commerce or use of technology? Then Prof. Samuel also shared about the other agenda like alcoholic beverages, is it? And
Yeah.
also other agenda like I also see on the agenda like trans fatty acid. There's no paper yet at
Yes.
this time, but
I
that is
think-
of interest to the region. So I think
number-
Canada will be.
Yeah, I think a number of those actually are going to be postponed. I believe the item on trans fat and the item even on alcoholic beverages will be postponed. Perhaps actually maybe reverting back on the points that you just raised, Dr. T, about those items in e-commerce. I did not really go into the details in my presentation, but the papers, however, the analysis in the paper goes into that.
Okay.
And in fact, actually, we made some analysis in relation to this notion of durability and how it should be applying. So essentially, the way date marking needs to be considered in the context of e-commerce, requirements, but also in this notion of like small packages. And in fact, our analysis has led to the point. Okay, I mean, the point of having information through these electronic platforms is essentially either to complement or to replace with something more useful. So essentially, we don't have any limitations of space. So if we don't have any limitations of space, there should be no exemption, because exemptions should be driven by an impediment. So we don't grant exemptions for the purposes of granting exemptions, because at the end of the day, labeling is there to provide consumers with information they need to make a decision for purchase or a decision for consumption. That's really the policy driver. So if there is no impediment that would really prevent the industry from making available this information, and previously the impediment was the label is a real estate, it's a real estate piece, when the real estate is limited, you tend to prioritize the key information. So you have exemptions on the basis of that. And when you have the real estate becomes unlimited, which is the case with electronic information, then I guess the exemption doesn't really stand anymore.
True. And
a lot of complications. So I'm a bit mindful of the time. Did I get the understanding right? I thought we were going to be. Is it 3 hours? Okay. So we have. Where do we stand on the time, Pauline?
we do have some time if members wish to bring up any point.
Okay.
Any other agenda items of interest to ASEAN member states? Yes, please do share. Then we can discuss. Any other item agenda that perplexes you?
I guess the item on sustainability might be an interesting one. We did not.
You're right.
We did not actually do the analysis for that one, but we had the chance to go through the material, and I had the chance also to look at the ASEAN member comments, and they were also kind of in between there. Like there were members that were supportive of new work, other members were less supportive of that, other members were kind of in the middle. And
the sustainability measures. So actually, Ilse's done some work. Our research foundation did some work now 6-7 years ago on sustainability metrics. It's a very complicated issue broadly, and then if you want to start talking about a specific food, this makes it even more complex. And we had a protein conference in February, and one of the speakers is an expert on life cycle analysis. And she just published a paper recently on taking into account the nutritional value in that life cycle analysis. So you have all the inputs and the outputs of the process, but some forms of a particular nutrient may be more bioavailable or more accessible than other forms. So there, I would say it's going to be a very complicated process to determine that sustainability. And then, of course, the same product could have a different rating by, if you make it in, Nigeria or Kenya and ship it somewhere, is that a different than if you make it locally? So there's going to be a tremendous number of complexities in trying to come to agreement on what that means.
Exactly. So it's so complicated that I wonder how we're going to make a sustainability claim on a label. So it may not be within the ambit or priority or even expertise of CCFL to be doing this. Yeah.
And I think actually I mean again here, I mean we don't take positions, as you know. I mean our role is not to take positions, but just to do the analysis. And if we do the analysis about the pro and the con arguments, the pro arguments to go for new work in this is that these sustainability claims are becoming pervasive. They are becoming used a lot by industry. They tend to be sought after by consumers, and therefore there is merit to look at conditions of harmonization or conditions of common guidance. So that's kind of the pro argument. But for this to happen, we need to scope the work in a very careful manner that it actually stays within the mandate of Codex and within the mandate of CCFL in particular. The con argument is, as you just said, this issue is so complex that it actually delves into so many considerations that go beyond the mandate of food production, food, food control, etc., because, there are some values issues and so on, and actually leads to sometimes an inability to have this really addressed by Codex, like it is addressed by other fora. And as a result, if Codex wants to do some work, it doesn't mean that it cannot. It can, but it will need to have that scoping so well crafted and a consensus done in such a way on the project document itself and the scoping to make sure that the work is actually achievable. Otherwise, the work would not be achievable, and we will lead to a situation where there is no amenability to standardization. So that's kind of so that's why when we see, I think there are countries that are firmly con, that would be the United States. And I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of other countries, like in ASEAN, I think maybe the Philippines might not be necessarily for this. I mean, I'll have to go back and check the comments there. There are countries that are firmly for, and there are countries kind of in the middle. I know that Canada is in the middle, like that's where usually Canada is. I mean, and here I'm not speaking on behalf of Canada, obviously. Yeah, I'm just an observer here. So,
Prof. Samuel, speaking of approving of new work, there's another agenda item on the CCCFL47, and that is a mechanism of prioritization of new work. And that is fresh on my mind of many delegations, because those of us who were in Germany for CCNFSDU would remember the experience there when several projects, newer proposals or revision of work were subject to the prioritization mechanism under CCNFSDU. And I personally said that it was not very well done, although there's a need for that mechanism for different purposes. So I think the mechanism may not be ready yet. So maybe learning from there in Germany, maybe delegation can share with CCFL, sharing experience from CCNFSDU, not necessarily taking position, but sharing from CCNFSDU what happened there, and keep the prioritization mechanism is not ready yet. It's still being fine-tuned. CCNFSDU mechanism I'm talking about, and also CCFL mechanism. Criteria is still being added, still being refined. So I think it cannot be used for reviewing of new work, for deciding whether to take on new work or not. It could be used as a trial basis, as a trial to see how the mechanism works, or what are the challenges, what are the loopholes, what are the criteria deficits, or new criteria need to be added. For that exercise, I would strongly support that. It could be used for that purposes, but it was not done like that in CCNFSDU, and therefore maybe we don't fall into the same trap like in nutrition committee. Further fine-tune the mechanism first and then only use it for prioritization. So there were many comments made during the NFSDU meeting. Many of the people in this online session were in Germany. Maybe you can share some thought on that also.
No, I mean, I think that's important, particularly for committees that tend to have, an overwhelming level of proposals. So being able to ensure that there is, fairness in the way these proposals are being dealt with, but also a methodology that is consistent with the Codex strategic plan, that is consistent with the general direction of the organization there. So, I think what CCNFSDU applied is really one of the best practices that I think is being followed by a number of committees. I believe CCFIX is actually kind of doing a similar type of approach. There is a prioritization process. CCRVDF systematically actually conducts these type of things. So these are really good practices that, are to be followed by Codex committees to help members, I guess, scrutinize the way new work is being proposed, but also even to direct members to propose new work, that is relevant. Because at the end of the day, also, what we want Codex to do is to work on standards that are relevant to the membership. We want Codex standards to be useful. Standard is not developed for the standard. It's developed really for usefulness,
Okay, so I'm going to make one maybe last comment, and then I'd like to get some comments and questions from the group. But as I mentioned, we had this protein conference in February, and one of the things that came out of that conference was the different nutritional profiles of different protein sources. So some big differences between animal source proteins and plants, and even plants, there's a wide variety of differences, but sometimes the amino acids are less able to be absorbed compared to some animal source proteins. And then you have this further issue of what I would call complementary nutrients. So dairy milk has a lot of calcium. Animal source proteins have a lot of bioavailable iron and zinc, which may not be available from plant source proteins. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of labeling issues coming up about what can be said about some of these novel proteins. And of course, we know some of the battles over plant milk. I mean, we in Southeast Asia, we drink a lot of soybean milk, and when we see a plant-based chicken, I mean, we know it's not the same as chicken, but how those labeling issues are going to be tackled. So and the other complicating factor is that some of these plant-based meat-like products can be fortified, for example, with calcium or iron or other things, B12, to be more like the animal source proteins that they are replacing. So how do you distinguish between the fortified versions and the non-fortified versions? So I see a lot of complexities that'll have to be addressed.
I see a comment from Dr. Nilton. Maybe he has problem with his audio. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, yes, I see that comment. So Timor-Leste is establishing a national food and drug authority, but there's a lot of online shopping. So a lot of the information, nutrition and allergen label appears on the food products, but it doesn't extend to the online retailer. So the buyers at the time of purchase wouldn't know. So that's going to be an issue, and it's going to make it also complex because, as Professor Godefroy just mentioned, on a label itself, there's only so much information that can fit on the physical package. But if you're online, well, you can have pages and pages and pages of information. And then you come to the problem of to what extent will consumers read all that information and look at it, and what information do we put in what format? So yes, a lot of complex issues for that.
Yeah. And yeah, we certainly appreciate that. And also, so we thought this platform is one of the ways we can share experiences and also with other countries in ASEAN region, and where one country can help the other on areas that are good at. So we can also further this collaboration with GFORCE and ELC can also look into bilateral support in countries with specific requests or specific needs. We can all discuss that in the near future. Yeah. So also we recognize a lot of SMEs in all countries in the region. So a special attention also need to be given to these companies to bring them up to speed on labeling, even basic nutrition labeling, with safety issues. Yeah. Any comments from other? Yeah. Someone turn on the mic.
So I'd be interested in the Indonesian perspective, either from BPOM or the Codex representatives. Obviously, a big country with a lot of islands, and so how is that being addressed in Indonesia? You're going through a lot of new approaches.
Indonesia.
Yanni Retiani,
Hello.
from BPOM?
Yes. Yeah, from East Timor.
Yes.
Yes.
Fernando.
Yes. I would like to introduce you that micro and small medium enterprise is a high priority for us to back up. I mean to establish our rural economic structure in the rural area. But we try to promote a public, private, and community partnership for to facilitate them, because we need to make sure that value chain is working properly. Then we try to introduce issues of nutrition, food safety, and others. So for us it's a very important area, because as a lack of everything for us in Timor-Leste. So sometimes it's very difficult for SMEs to reach even local market, like hotels that need standards, restaurant that need standard, and supermarket. And even we have a opportunity to market our product in through Singapore to other countries, and then also Pacific, because in terms of quality in terms of flavor, we have unique. Let's say that our coffee, Timor-Leste coffee, it's part of 14 the best 14 countries produce coffee in the world. But not only coffee, we have other community that the potential. Therefore, I think this is a very important. But of course, we need policy, we need law to support this program. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying Timor-Leste coffee one of these days, maybe on its way through Singapore.
Yes.
But this is so. You know, I think there will be a kind of an evolution because, as we've discussed today, a lot of technical, complicated issues are going to be developing, and how to manage those. So each country has its own sovereignty and ability to decide, but sometimes for some of these technical things, it can be useful to harmonize. We've had a lot of, so some of you will know that we've done a lot of work on food labeling over the past decades. Pauline has led a lot of that work, and it's always a very popular meeting together because you know, there's a lot of different approaches for labeling and how to convey information and what information to be conveyed. We've broached some potential ASEAN harmonization, and some of those discussions are ongoing, but not always easy within an ASEAN context to do that. But I think there's some momentum towards looking at harmonization, which we hope can make it easier to so that not everybody has to duplicate the same work, and we find some reliable sources to say, okay, if this is, I mean, this is also partially the goal of Codex, to have a kind of agreed standard by experts wherever they are in the world, which can be then agreed to apply in all regions. So we hope perhaps within ASEAN we can help to facilitate that and move that forward, because as we know, for Timor-Leste, obviously not a lot of population, so you don't have many people to devote to all of these issues in every committee. I think even the ASEAN has how many meetings? 200 meetings a year or something. So it's hard to find enough people to attend all the meetings. So any further comments from Indonesia or Thailand or Myanmar?
For Thailand, we don't have particular issues. Actually, we concur with a lot of analysis from Godfrey, especially like the risk analysis part of the allergens, because we are quite concerned with the ability of many small medium enterprises to conduct actually the quantitative risk assessment. So for the qualitative risk assessment, if there are guidelines, a clear guideline how to implement them properly, that would be quite a useful tool for them, like for the SMEs. And for the e-commerce, actually regarding the national legislations, we share common view that it would be quite difficult for many sellers using the platform, the e-commerce platform that will follow all the legislations, because the nature of the e-commerce platform is international. So you can't really know that where the products will go to and how you can follow all the national legislations, right? And then so we're quite concerned about that. For the exemptions that Dr. Song asked before, in our view, we see that sometimes the seller on the e-commerce platform is different person from the producers. So they may not have, all the information. They only have the access to the information on the label or labeling. So they cannot have all the information to be displayed on the platform. So that's our concern. So we have to look into that it will not be restrictive. It may be, I mean, if the seller can access all the information, they should display all the, information that comply with the Codex Stein 1. But if they can't, they should still be able to sell their products through the platform. Yeah, that's about it. And for the sustainability claim, that we share your views as well, that it's quite a complex issues, but very interesting, because if it's not Codex to do that, who will do it? Actually, I mean, we should protect our consumers because the various contexts of the claims, they can come from many particular aspects of the sustainability, but consumers expecting something, maybe expecting something else, but the claim is not, may provide different information. Then I mean, CCFL could look into that to protect consumer on that regard. Yeah, and then we have some small issues on different views, and that's we posted on the CRD, so we should be able to discuss that in the CCFL next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. So yeah, very helpful. And yeah, we Thai food is also getting all around the world, and obviously we have a lot of big exporters in the region. Almost all the countries represented here. Great. And will any representatives from Indonesia be attending the CCFL next week? I didn't hear. I might have missed that. Dr. Yanni or Dia? Yeah.
Ibu
Dia?
Dia, yeah.
Thank you. From Indonesia, Investiani will attend the CCFL meeting along with Ms. Dia from National Food NFA.
Great.
Actually, in Indonesia, we have the same problem as Thailand mentioned about the e-commerce. For example, sometimes the seller in e-commerce put excessive or misleading information in their page, and when we invite the producer, they cannot do anything because the information was put by the seller, not the producer. And also in our position, we will we comment about the minimum durability, which is we consider it is important for us to make sure that the product is received by the consumer before the expired date. I think we think that this is important thing for the consumers to make sure that the product they will buy in e-commerce can be received before the expired date with enough time before the consumption. And also regarding the allergen, just like Thailand, we also comment about sesame, because in Asian countries we eat a lot of sesame, and I think the case on sesame allergen is very low in Asian countries. And also we also comment on yesterday we have discussion with stakeholder, and we have also the same view with Thailand, that, and also Dr. Geoffrey, that quantitative risk assessment is very difficult especially for SMEs, and we consider that we should include qualitative risk assessment also for food allergy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eva. Yeah, and good to hear that you'll be at the meeting next week. Okay. Maybe any further comments from the Malaysian, Dr. Ferda, the Malaysian contention? Or any of your colleagues?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Prof. Samuel of the informative information regarding the allergenicity or in food, because we find that the information is very informative for us, especially in terms of the protein with regards to the allergen. And on that, this paper on that issue, we also do have some comments in as Indonesia and Thailand with regards to the sesame products, where we thought that this is not considered as significant allergens. Therefore, in this region, therefore it should be moved from the section 4.2.1.4 to 4.2.1.5. Besides that, also we do discuss on the labeling of the allergen, where we thought that because in the section of paragraph 8.3, there is an requirement that this allergen labeling should be declared in such a manner to be in the different from the in terms of the type, the color of the color, the type, and the bold, and the type of font. Then we thought that this could be an optional rather than a required mandatory. Therefore, we propose that the 8.3.1 to be an optional, either it will be 8.1.3.1 or 8.3.2, where in the 8.3.2, the declared contains that the statement on the allergen should be what we call declared in the separate statement on the list of the ingredient. On the other agenda item on the e-commerce, also we do have a position on the what we mean as mentioned as Dr. T just now on the small, okay, the small
Exemption.
units, the labeling, the exemption of the small units, where we find that in terms of e-commerce or e-page, there is no issues on the space limitation. Therefore, we do not agree to remove this from the text. And last one on the agenda item on the sustainability labeling claim, Malaysia strongly propose that this should not be considered as new work, as this issue is too broad, the topic is too broad, and furthermore, we thought that this is beyond the TOR of the CCFL. I think that's all from Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the clear statement. So I think Malaysia's position is very clear. Those are helpful comments. Maybe Dr. Surya from Laos, you have some comments about the Laos situation and how you see this issue to be affecting or working for Laos. Can you, Dr. Surya, or if not, maybe Dr. Haag on Vietnam. You have your Codex office, which is dealing with all of these complexities for Vietnam. How is Vietnam going to address these issues, or any comment about some of the technical analysis?
Thank you. For the food labeling, I think Vietnam is very concerned the food allergen labeling, and because at that time Vietnam is in progress to develop the degree on the nutrition labeling. But at the time, we get a lot of the comments from the industry and the relative agency for this draft. And I don't know, yes, the time exactly that this draft will be issued. So this is information for all of you to know about the draft for the degree on the nutrition labeling in Vietnam. We also follow the food allergen labeling, and we think Vietnam is support the Codex committee for food labeling to develop and to follow the this item, because for Vietnam it's very important. However, for the other issues like the sustainability claim, in fact, we don't know this, and this very complicated with Vietnam at a time. And the e-commerce, I think it's very interesting, and for Vietnam it's very new issues. So in the future, we will follow this item. So thank you.
It's
Okay.
interesting. It's interesting that Dr. Ha mentioned about nutrition labeling regulation in Vietnam. We look forward to that. And that reminds me that UC Southeast Asia region is organizing a seminar on July 18. Yeah? And on this, we have been doing for, I think, 11 years, 12 years, to gather all the ASEAN member states to discuss about nutrition labeling and claims in the region. And so we are planning for this one to be on July 18, 19. So we hope to send out the agenda, yeah, Pauline, agenda very soon, and invite the member state to attend. This will be in Kuala Lumpur.
Okay, thank you, Dr. T, for that update. Maybe I should just mention one other point. Some of the attendees will be aware. So in February this year, the WHO Executive Board approved a draft resolution supporting food fortification. That draft resolution is going to the World Health Assembly later this month, I guess in 2 weeks in Geneva. And that resolution is supporting further use of food fortification as a tool to reduce micronutrient deficiencies. I think there'll be a special emphasis on folic acid and reduction of neural tube defects. So, and that will, of course, to the extent that that gets implemented, that will affect labeling space and mentioning some of those added nutrients that might be in the fortification. So everything is linked and complicated, but you understand that's coming up. So Pauline, you were going to add some comments about our conference coming up in July.
Yes, thank you, Jeff and Dr. T. Also just want to, as mentioned by Dr. T, UC is working together with Malaysia, Dr. T, and also NSM to organize the meeting on nutrition labelings and claims, which will be happening on July 18 and 19. We will be sending out the invitation to all the countries in Southeast Asia region very soon, inviting all of you to come and also share the updates of your country's regulations and status on nutrition labelings as well as claims. So in addition to the seminar, we will be also having a half-day workshop on nutrition labeling, likely in the morning of July 19. And also in the afternoon of the 19th, we will be also arranging a half-day workshop on the discussion on fortification food fortification. So we look forward to seeing many of you at the events in Kuala Lumpur pretty soon.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. So I wanted to give also a chance to Dr. Pierre Pro from Myanmar, or Dr. Mo, yes, Pierre Pro.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And yes, Myanmar has developed and enforced the labeling directive since 2022, and with a grace period of 1 year. And now we are enforcing the business to comply with the labeling. So actually the directive is based on the Codex General Standard for Food Labeling, and the allergen information on the labeling is exactly as the Codex, but we haven't developed any allergen management for the guidelines or directive for the business. So on the other hand, we have solely rely on the the labeling directives to describe on the label as the allergen as described by the Codex. So, and on the other hand, it is not possible to follow the allergy management by the small and very small micro business to follow here in Myanmar. And on the other, and concerning with the e-commerce, and there is no online regulations to comply, but the general labeling directive applies to all the online sale or the offline sale or market sale. So they have to comply with the regulation. So the approach in enforcement we are using is that we will still need to work with the post-market surveillance with the other police force, as well as we are also linked with the Interpol to bring down the advertising webpage from Facebook, as well as in social media, as well as the website. That is one kind of approach. Another kind of approach is that we have to investigate the other the address of the online retailer, because they are delivering through the delivery services, and we can identify where their addresses and where they are hiding and where is their warehouse. So we have to use that we have to drop this approach, because we no longer have the address of the online retailer. But on the other hand, we can still bring down their page from internet with the help of the Interpol. So that is our current approach. And one of the main thing is that on the other hand, we don't have update from Codex because we cannot join the Codex committee meeting lately, and they removed us from the Codex meeting. So we have to see from the web broadcasting. So that is one of the issue that we are lost contact, lost contact with the update of the Codex. So it's one of the challenges we need to deal with. So thank you very much for chance to discuss.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Pepper. That's important. I don't know, perhaps Professor Godfrey, the G4's portal can be one accessible approach, but that might be discussed offline.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, we are happy to provide as much resources as possible to all members of the community of food regulatory science. So, I mean, we are essentially a scientific organization, a non-political one, and open to everybody to provide any support that is needed to our scientific community.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's I think a lot of good discussions, good information. I think we all recognize the complexities. I hope that this has been helpful to convey a very considered and expert analysis of the current proposals that are on the table, and will help facilitate the meeting next week and the ASEAN participation in that meeting next week to make progress on these issues. And as I said, we are having some discussions internally also within ILSI. Again, like every organization, we cannot do everything, but this allergens one, we had a conference a couple of years ago now, maybe more than 5 years ago in Thailand on regional allergenicity issues and management of those. And you know, we heard stories of some companies who are doing very complicated processes, building special container equipment to transport their raw materials to ensure no cross-contamination. And that may be suitable and possible for some specialty, larger specialty manufacturers, but for, again, SMEs in our region, obviously, they very rarely have separate containers, and they might be having a range of products and storage facilities where some cross-contamination could be an issue. And on the technical side, there's work being done on the interactions of one or more allergens together. So how those can be properly assessed. So yes, we saw a lot of things that we're going to need to address, but I hope today's conference was useful to have this technical analysis. We very much appreciate the GForce team of technical analysts to be brought together, and the participants for joining this and hearing this discussion. I would open to Dr. T or Professor Godefroy, any last comments or additional remarks?
Thank you, Jeff. I do not have much more to say. I also echo what Mr. Smith said. We appreciate your time and your thoughts in joining this online meeting, and I hope that ILSI will continue to work with GForce and organize further such sessions where we can share thoughts and views on various issues and further progress ASEAN as a region towards more progressive food regulations in the region, learning from Codex and amongst each other from this region. And to Myanmar, Dr. Pai, we will share with you whatever documents we have, and also welcome you to join the July meeting that we're organizing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, we will.
And again, also, thank you very much. Thank you. Special thanks to you all for making yourselves available. Thank you for the valuable input that you provided. We look forward to added input from you as to how we can make these sessions more useful to you, more relevant for the work that you do, and also for the needs of your Codex contact points and Codex teams. Special thanks to the entire ILSI Southeast Asia region team, Dr. T, Dr. Smith, Pauline, Yuki, all the team members facilitated and who enabled this meeting and who are collaborating with us on this Codex initiative. Thank you all, and see hopefully many of you next week in Gatineau.